Hello, this is Jerry Morton. Welcome to my Finding My Way podcast. This is podcast number 45, titled In the Field. Podcast 36 through 61 are stories from the year of Army training I experienced. The training started in August 1966 and ended in June 1967. The stories are published in the book Reluctant Lieutenant, From Basic to OCS in the 60s, which was published by Texas A&M University Press as a military history. In the Field is an account of Jerry's introduction to Army War Games at Fort McClellan, Alabama, in the late fall of 1966 as part of his advanced infantry training. He experiences the inherent fear of sentry duty, an encounter with the enemy, a lesson in civil rights, and live night fire. It is recommended that you listen to the Army training stories in the order in which they are presented so that you can appreciate the full contextual richness of later stories. In the Field. Wherever we were, it had taken us a long time to get there. The trucks took us deep into the woods over mud roads that lacked the benefit of regular traffic. The 3-hour truck ride was jolting. We complained and made jokes. For all we knew, the Army would make us march out of here rather than provide us with transportation. We were not going to knock the transportation all that much. The thing about the Army is that you never know what the next day will bring. No one tells you the long-range plan. You just go from day to day doing exactly what the sergeants tell you to do. After the truck ride, we marched with full packs and gear. The load was heavy. Before the first hour of marching had passed, we were all wet with sweat. It was a cold day, but the exertion was causing men to take off their field jackets and roll up their shirt sleeves. By the end of the third hour, the marching was getting old. Someone said he had overheard a sergeant saying that we would reach our base camp area by sunset. I hoped that was true. None of us were physically worn down. We were just hot, uncomfortable, and bored with walking deeper and deeper into the woods. Anyone who got separated from the company would never find his way back to the barracks. We were totally isolated and dependent on our leaders. You just trusted that they knew what was going on. At the top of a large, mostly tree-barren hill, the column halted. This was base camp. We were immediately ordered to stake out claim to sleeping areas by squads. We would be sleeping under the stars. No tents had been issued us. If it rained, I guess we would simply have gotten wet. If the Army didn't want us to get wet, it would order that there be no rain. Life has a way of mellowing out when an organization as powerful as the U.S. Army is handling things. We knew this to be true, except when the Army messed up. No one told you about it. Your personal misery factor was the only barometer you could rely upon for knowing when the Army messed up. We unrolled our sleeping bags. Since the base camp was on the top of the hill, it was not possible to have us put our sleeping bags in neat rows. We had to find whatever semblance of level ground we could to sleep on. This task tended to spread us out in a rather haphazard manner. The sergeant said that the ground was so hard we would not have to dig foxholes to sleep in. If this had been a real combat mission, however, we would have had to dig the foxholes. Thank heavens for simulated warfare. It was obvious that the hill had been used before. There were half-dug foxholes all around the top third of the hill. They had been there for a while because the weather had rounded out their sharp edges. They provided the little bit of level ground that most of us found for sleeping. As darkness set in, we got out our sea rations. No fires were allowed. We ate the food cold. Many of the guys would not eat all of the food in a sea ration carton. Some would trade a can of ham and lima beans for a can of reconstituted scrambled eggs or some other item. A lot of guys simply did not want to eat all of their rations and offered what was left to anyone who wanted it. I ate everything. It did not matter if I liked it or not. Little tins of peanut butter and jelly were the items guys gave up most often. I'd never liked either of them in civilian life. Here I ate every one given away. In the woods, anything could happen. You did not know when the Army would remember to resupply you with food. It was easy to get separated and lost from the others. I ate to have calories just in case I needed the extra energy. You could not afford to become weak out here. Physical weakness meant getting hurt or making mental errors, which meant wasted energy. Staying as healthy as possible was important. I surely did not want to go through the weeks of marching with another smashed toe or some other hurting body part. No one would feel sorry for me or give me the day off. You kept going, no matter what. Fortunately, we were going into a cloudless night with a quarter moon overhead. You could almost see your shadow in the soft light reflecting off the moon. People were moving back and forth. Clangs and clangs were constant as tin cans, metal canteens, and steel pots bumped into rifles, each other, ammo magazines, and any number of other metal objects. The sergeants called the squad leaders up to the top of the hill to talk to them. We stayed by our sleeping bags and backpacks, smoking and talking. Muffled laughter could be heard throughout the company area. Almost everyone was loose enough. We were making it through training okay. The sergeants say that we are tactical now, Bill, our acting squad leader, told us upon returning from the hilltop. One of our squad guys asked, "What's tactical?" "We are in the war games now. There's another company or two looking for us. They are the enemy. We have to set up a perimeter guard to defend the hill. If they find us, they could attack, charge up the hill, and mess up our gear and stuff like that. We have to get ready to repel them if they attack tonight." "So what do we do?" responded another squad member. "I don't know. The acting squad leaders are supposed to meet back on the top of the hill in about 15 minutes. We'll develop a plan then. When I know something, I'll let you know too, okay?" Of course it was okay. We had no choice in the matter. I began looking around. There were a few scattered clumps of trees here and there down the hillside. Way off toward the bottom of the hill was a dirt road. It looked as if it were about 5 or 6 football fields away from where we sat. On the other side of the road was a wall of black. It was nothing but trees as far back into the darkness as you could want to go. Daggone, I thought. There could be an army of men in there right now, just waiting for the order to charge, and we'd never know it. This was a really exposed spot to be in. Here they would come, out running as hard as they could, screaming at the top of their lungs. Their M14s would be spitting fire. Oh yeah, they would be firing blanks, but it would not make any difference. We would be in chaos. People would be falling all over the place. They would step into the half-dug foxholes and fall. They would trip over sleeping bags and step on guys trying to fire their rifles from the prone position. We were not prepared to be attacked. Then in the morning, you would have to spend all kinds of time finding your personal gear. It would be strewn all over the place. That was assuming they didn't take you as a prisoner somewhere. I had heard that they took guys prisoners during these simulated war games. They would tie you up and drag you through the woods. After they roughed you up some, they would torture you. I doubted that they would draw blood. The Army would not allow that. They would just pull you up by the ropes on your arms and put you under a lot of muscle strain. Stuff like that was what you would expect if you were captured. In short, the rumor mill felt that it would not be good to be caught. I had no intention of being caught. My mind was pretty set on that point. The squad leaders went back to the top of the hill. You could see people moving around on the hilltop. There, dark figures seemed to move with purpose. Arms would point off in a direction. 3 or 4 figures would separate themselves from the clump of people and walk off to wherever the arm had pointed. Someone came from the top of the hill to our squad. "You 4 men," he said, pointing to the 4 beside me. "Come with me. Bring your rifles." They got up and followed him over the hilltop and down the other side. We all recognized each other when we got up close. If you did not know the guy's name, you still knew he belonged to the company. You had seen him in the barracks, or eaten at a table with him, or stood in line with him to get ammo. Things like that brought us together so that we all pretty well knew one another. Someone else came down to our group and took 2 more of us off to be on perimeter guard duty. There were just a couple of us left. I decided to go to the top of the hill and get a better look at what was going on. At the top, people were moving here and there. You could see the beginning of a circle of men squatting down about a third of the way down the hillside. They must be the perimeter guard. One guy I liked fairly well was giving directions to a couple other men. I approached him. "What's up?" I asked. We're trying to make sense out of this. They appointed a bunch of us to act as platoon sergeants and told us to set up a defense of the hill for the night. Nobody can agree on what to do. They finally set up a perimeter defense hill, some line around the hill. Well, nobody told me what to do. It's a little boring. Tell me what to do to help, I told him. Mainly, we're just placing bodies out there to fight if we get attacked. He paused as the group approached us in the darkness. "Where are you assigned?" a voice from the group asked me as it got close enough to see my face. "I haven't been yet," I replied. "Here's one you can use," the voice said to a shadowy figure beside him. "Okay, we're going down the hill. Come on," the shadowy figure said, motioning me to follow the group. We walked down the side of the hill. He placed men at different spots and told them to stay there until they were relieved. In a short while, it was just the shadowy man and me walking down the hill. We approached a clump of trees. It was a scraggly stand of 3 or 4 trees with a bush or 2 in the center of the clump. "You stay here. You're the forward observer." Looking down at the dirt road that separated the dark woods from my exposed position, and seeing that I was just 20 yards or so away from it did not make me comfortable. "What do I do if they're in the woods?" I asked with genuine concern. "If you hear them in there, just let us know back at the top of the hill. We'll send someone down to relieve you. The sign is red, and the countersign is wolf. If someone approaches your position, call out red. If he doesn't say wolf, he's not one of ours," the guy said as he withdrew into the darkness toward the top of the hill. This was not good. I was in a bad position. There was not even a good place to hide in this clump of trees. Open ground was all around me. There was no ground cover between me and the top of the hill. It was just an easy walk through the short grass all the way to the top. The hilltop was so far away that you could not see movement at its crest. I knew there were people moving all over the top of it. They were so far away that they would never hear me yell if the enemy started coming out of the woods. Any fool on the enemy side could guess that the clump of trees had an observer in it. Their whole army would charge out of the woods, cross the road, and cover the 20 yards to my pitiful trees in a flash. If I were to escape them, I would have to hear them moving in the brush as they got close to the tree line for their charge. Listening was my only defense. I sat with the bushes to my back. I faced the road. At least the enemy could not see my profile. I would be partially camouflaged in the dark. Loading my M14 with a magazine of blank shells, I was as ready as I could be. The point was not to move. In the shadows, the enemy could overlook my form from a distance. Only movement would cause his eyes to focus on my position. If I were in charge of the enemy company, I surely would send out patrols. One of the patrols would be to this clump of trees. I would have them sneak up without making a sound. They would jump the sentry with such quickness and suddenness that he would be knocked out and dragged back as a prisoner. Since this was only a war game, we would not physically knock him out. We would just pin him down and tell him we would kick the shit out of him if he yelled out. Then we would take him back into the trees as a prisoner and interrogate him. Learn about how well the hill is defended. I wished I were the enemy. My plan for them was a lot better than the plan my guys had for me. It struck me. The thought struck me that if this were a real war, I would get killed here. This was not a defensible position. By the time I knew an attack was about to come out of the woods, it would be too late. I would be shot in the back trying to run up the hill in this open ground. The only warning the guys on the hilltop would get of the attack would be the sound of gunfire killing me. This was not good. I was nervous. There was no concern on my part that I would fall asleep on guard duty. The night wore on. It was too dark to see my wristwatch. Sounds from the top of the hill decreased to just about nothing. I strained to hear something move in the tree line directly in front of me. I could hear sounds, but they were tiny. They were not the movement of 10, 50, or 200 men. Maybe it was just one man sneaking up on me. He would be slowly moving up the hill. Just one leg would move up as he pressed his chest and belly to the ground. He would hold it there, motionless, for 30 or 40 seconds, and then push off with it and be 2 feet closer to me. He would wait a little longer, and then he would move a foot or two closer. The darkness would cause his form to be just another shadow, a dark spot in the landscape of dark and darker. I would never know the difference unless I actually saw movement. No shade of darkness was too obscure to be scrutinized by my stare. I was not going to be captured. I was going to get the hell out of there as fast as I could when they came for me. There was a noise. It was definitely a sound. Someone was walking. He was coming from the left, paralleling the road. Yes, it was real. I could hear muffled voices. It was a patrol. They were coming to capture me. The voices moved closer. I heard muffled laughter. What the hell? They were pretty confident to be approaching me, laughing on the way. How could I deal with this many? They could jump me. It would be easy enough to do. One could keep my attention while two of them moved to both sides. Then they would all rush me. "Halt!" I said in a loud voice, lowering the barrel of my M14 so that it pointed in their direction. They kept talking in their muffled voices as they moved closer to me. "Red!" hissed from my lips. No counter sign came from them. They just kept walking toward me. I could see their forms. There were 4 of them. 2 of them kept muttering as they slowly walked toward me. Stepping from the bush, with my M14 leveled at their face, I said with the force of my fear and anger for being in this situation, "Damn you to hell! Stop right there! I've rigged this thing to full automatic. These blanks will shoot paper wads into your eyes and blow out your brains. You stop or I'll blow you away. You know these paper wads can kill you if they hit you just right. I've got you." They froze. Nobody moved. No one talked. What was I going to do now? They could rush me in a moment's notice, and I could not stop them. "Drop to the ground, face down. Move fast, you bastards. I'm pissed now. Drop," I commanded. The bastards were not going to drag this dude off without knowing they'd been in a real fight. Almost instantly, they hit the ground. The guy in the lead began going down, and the others followed. He was a little chunky. That's strange. How did a chunky guy make it this far into infantry training and stay chunky? "This is still a bad situation," was the message in my mind. They had to be disarmed. I had not seen their M14s. Their weapons had to be collected. They could swing the muzzle up and pow, and they had me right where I thought I had them. "Spread your legs and arms, spread eagle now, you assholes," I demanded with the force of a desperate man about to be sucked into a whirlpool of mud and filth. Immediately they complied. As I walked forward to pick up their weapons, I realized that I would have to walk between their legs and arms. One of them could scissor his legs around mine while rolling over. That would bring me down in a flash. I needed to be quick and careful. No rifles. They have no rifles. Something is very wrong here. Maybe they are a special unit and only carry sidearms. Is a thought that sprang into my mind as I leaned over and patted down the sides of the chunky one. No, no, no. This can't be. He's got a major's gold leaf on his shoulders, or is it a silver leaf of a lieutenant colonel? I cannot make out the color in the weak moonlight. It does not make any difference. This guy is a big-time officer. I am patting down a major or a lieutenant colonel. No sidearms on him. They must be here inspecting the troops. Well, he's going along with it. I'm only doing my job. The man next to him is a captain. The other 2 are lieutenants. If the major had decided not to go along with it, The other 3 would be on my case. No one has a weapon. As these thoughts raced through my mind, I patted them all down just to be sure. What am I to do now? I've got to carry this out as if I don't know who they are. Okay, boys, I said in a low but firm voice. Now we are going to low crawl up to the top of that hill. No talking between you. I've come this far without your tricking me. I'm not about to let you hatch any plans now. Remember, this rifle is on full automatic. It'll sting the hell out of your butts. Let's go. Start crawling. They did. They started low crawling up the hill. It was a long way. They had to have been depressed. I was behind them. After 10 yards, I began to slow down. They could not tell I was not keeping up. The distance between us grew. After 20 yards, I stopped. They just kept steadily crawling up the hill without speaking a word. Finally, I lost sight of them in the darkness. I would have loved being at the top of the hill when all that brass came into view, low crawling up the side of it. When they discovered that nobody was behind them, would have been a fine moment too. Good sense told me to stay away. If they got mad, it would not be hard to find me. Mine was the only clump of trees around. I would have a hard time convincing anyone that the incident had happened at another stand of trees. More time passed. I began to worry. With your body trapped in a single spot, and your mind unoccupied by activity, the mind tends to work on your wearisome thoughts. It invents a host of options that are predominantly dire in nature. Lost in those thoughts, time passes unnoticed. Contemplating a life in military prison, I found myself overreacting to the crunch of footsteps rapidly approaching me from the rear. Someone was coming directly toward my sanctuary from the hilltop. I turned from facing the road to confront my assailant. "Halt!" I shouted into the darkness. "Red!" "Wolf!" came the reply as the figure materialized. It was one of our guys. "I've been sent to relieve you. You can go up and get some sleep." Relief flooded over me as I lowered my rifle. Did you see any officers come by on your way down?" I asked as casually as I could under the circumstances. "Nah, but that don't mean nothing. I've been dozing in the sack the last couple of hours." Up at the top of the hill, I decided to look for someone I knew to ask about the officers. I soon found my friend, the acting platoon sergeant. "Did any officers come up here a couple of hours ago?" I asked. "Why, yes, a major and some others. They were all sweated up and looking dirty. They told one of the sergeants that we had good sentries." "Why, did they talk to you?" "No. No one talked to me," I said, thinking that, in a way, I was telling the truth. "They never said a word to me." I thought it best not to mention the encounter. I could still be in big trouble. Then again, I might just get by with this if I kept it quiet. The morning brought more marching. We spent about 2 hours getting to where we were going. It was a training site with bleachers, posters, a chalkboard, and pointers. We started to learn about explosives. Setting up claymore mines was the first lesson. The word was out that some sergeant had accidentally turned the convex side of the mine toward the bleachers holding the trainees. When he pushed the detonator button, it wiped out a third of the guys in the first 3 or 4 rows. Rumor said that it had happened just a couple of weeks ago. Who knew for sure if the rumor was true? In any event, we never got to see a live demonstration of how the thing looked when it exploded. During one of the smoke breaks, I was walking with a couple of buddies to the honey bun truck when a black sergeant hollered out, "You, soldier, come over here." I pointed at myself and asked, "Me?" "Yes, you. Your friends can go on," he said with an unreadable expression on his face. Approaching him where he sat on a log, I asked, "What do you want, Sergeant?" "You were one of the 2 white guys at Grundy's last Saturday night, weren't you?" he said in an innocent enough tone. "Yes, that's right," I replied, not knowing if I was in trouble or not. "Sit down here." He motioned to a place on the log beside him. "That took a lot of courage on your part for you to be there." "No, we were just having fun," I said, grinning. "You saw how everyone treated you with respect. No one hassled you, did they?" "You're right, everyone just let us enjoy ourselves. It was a nice break," I said with respect. "Well, that wouldn't happen to a black man going into a white place like that. They really treat blacks bad here. You saw that we don't treat whites like that. We can get along. People don't have to be so mean. The whites have their country clubs and their private get-togethers, but there's nothing for us blacks. Everything here is for whites only. We can't get anything they have," he related with great sincerity. "I'm sorry they're making it so bad for you here. It's just not fair." "How do you deal with it?" I asked. "We have no choice. We just stay away. Mainly we and our wives stay on post or go to Grundy's. That's about the only place we have where we won't be hassled," he said with great sadness in his face. "You're all right. We all know who you are. If you need any help, let us know. We'll back you up." He said that as he stood up and held out his hand to me. We shook hands and nodded as we looked into each other's eyes. Then I went to the honey bun truck. I never told anyone about the conversation. Nobody knew about my adventures at Grundy's. I would tell Stone if I ever saw him again. So far, our paths had not crossed. After a full day of training, we marched for the mandatory 2-hour trip back to the base camp. After chow, they marched us off again. It was dark when we reached a dirt road with trucks waiting for us. We drove through the backwoods for another hour or so before they stopped. It was another training site. Bleachers, posters, chalkboards, and pointers greeted us again. This time we were to experience live fire at night. There must have been several other companies present. Trainees were there when we arrived, and more trucks kept arriving to offload additional troops. The way they explained the exercise made the whole process simple enough. You lay in a prone position with your head centered over the top of your weapon. Then you pointed the weapon in the direction your head was looking and fired. It was too dark to aim any better than that. Standard white paper targets were about 100 yards down range. You could just make them out in the darkness. We loaded our magazine with live ammo. Every 7th round was a tracer. There were more sergeants there than I had encountered in any one place before. I think they were afraid that we would end up shooting each other. We lined up about 20 men deep behind each firing pit. The order to commence firing was given to the 50 or so men on the firing line. The flashes of muzzles and the arcing lines of tracer rounds were just plain pretty. The tracer rounds' glow seemed to leave a continuous red-white streak from their point of origin until they hit something or skipped off the ground in unpredictable patterns in their ricocheting attempts to stay alive. My turn came. The sergeant lay on the ground right beside me. "Stay calm. Keep your weapon pointed downrange, son," came his soothing voice into my ear. "When you squeeze off the round, hold off firing the next for just a second or two to get reoriented." What was he talking about? There was nothing to get reoriented to. I had fired the weapon so many times. I was even a darn good shot. Well, you had to tolerate being treated like a fool often enough in the Army. This guy was not going to get my goat. "Ready on the left," came the cry from somewhere behind me. "Ready on the left," came the answer from a voice out of the darkness. "Ready on the right," the same questioning voice blared. "Ready on the right," a responding voice shouted. "All ready on the firing line. Commence firing." Crack! Crack! The bright fire blasts of the burning gunpowder from the rifle's muzzle blinded me. Everything was stone black. I simply could not see. If a herd of elephants wearing sneakers had charged my position, I would have been trampled to death before I knew what had stepped on me. Jeez, the enemy would have me. I could not see anything. I could not hear anything because the blasts of the rifle, with my head hanging over the top of the firing chamber, had my ears ringing. In the confusion of my mind, a sound started coming through. At first I did not know what it was. "Calm. Refocus. When you're fire again," came the sergeant's voice. I squeezed the trigger. Another blinding flash. The shadowy movements I had begun to notice disappeared into solid blackness. Night blindness in a real firefight would be a very bad thing. Before I could fully understand what I was doing, my seventh round, the tracer arced from my barrel. I could see it flying across the field toward the target that should be somewhere near the spot where the disappearing round landed. That was satisfying. At least I knew where I had shot that one. The next thought was depressing. Someone sitting out in a tree line looking my way could follow that tracer streak right back to my head perched above the rifle's stock. Night fighting could be very risky business. Then my magazine was empty. They retrieved the paper target. I had hit it 4 times. It was a miracle. We waited forever while every soldier they had trucked out to the range went through the night fire exercise. When it was over, we clambered back into the trucks. The 1-hour-plus ride and the hour or so march back to base camp left few hours for sleeping before dawn. Quickly, the overwhelming feeling of being in the field was fatigue. Whenever we took a 10-minute break, whether it was on a march or during training, we would close our eyes to catch a few Z's. Guys began falling asleep in the bleachers during classes and falling on the men in front of them. I was always tired, but I was not about to fall asleep. It was hard to understand how someone could fall asleep. You had to make the decision to sleep and then you slept. That was how it was for me. I had never fallen asleep in my memory. It was just not in my behavior pattern. At last we were in the trucks going back to the barracks in a 3-day pass. I was going to be with Anna in Atlanta. The ride from Fort McClellan to Atlanta seemed to take forever. The guys let me off at the airport. This time Anna recognized me right off. She had us booked into a first-class hotel in the heart of downtown Atlanta on Peachtree Street. It was so good to be with her. We did not leave our room very much. We went out to eat, talked some, and I slept a lot. That consumed my 3-day pass. Once again, our parting was hard. Her plane left before I was to rendezvous with the guys at our predetermined time and pickup point. We were all on time. Good, tight, dependable, secure, comforting military time.